meteorologist Casey Cloud jumping in right now on this radar stream because there's concern about the weather conditions there around Gainesville with some lightning, gradually getting closer there. That USF-UF game here could go into a delay pretty soon. It's on the SEC network right now, late second quarter, close to halftime. If nothing else, it could, start to really have an impact on festivities there at halftime in Gainesville or, change that schedule around. But number 13, Florida winning 9-3 right now in South Florida. South Florida, impressive team there in that they beat Boise State by a wide margin there last Thursday night. So it is a close one there. Neither team getting in the end zone. I mean, Florida did, but it was nullified a couple times. That touchdown efforts were by penalties. So, again, that's the storyline, and that we do have lightning is about 9.5 miles away, according to the UF Weather Stem station here. So, some criteria, different places do different things. I know looking at the broadcast on the SEC broadcast there right now, SEC Network, Dave Neal on the call there, and it's definitely getting cloudier and darker. It was showing signs, of sun there coming on through, but not anymore. That red dot is where Ben Hill Griffin Stadium is. I know FSU's game did not get impacted by any type of lightning or rain. Florida State winning 77-3 against the lower division opponent today in East Texas A&M. And it was one, though, where it was very hot. It was hot in Gainesville, but should start to cool things off some here with this type of weather coming in. But obviously, there's quite a bit of lightning being indicated here, which is concern. Last week in Tallahassee for the Alabama game, there was not that lightning. We had some rain, but this is, something where there's a good bit of lightning coming in, and that causes a delay. That causes, precautions to need to be taken as USF's moving the ball there against Florida right now. A little over a minute before the half. I know in Athens, they're still on a weather delay. The last check, they're Georgia Bulldogs playing Austin Peay end up in Clemson, South Carolina. They're not in a weather delay, but they're having trouble with that team there from Troy, Alabama, down 7-0 early in that one. It had a delay, but it's back underway. There's also UF alert that was sent out here. A few different things coming out. It's all clear now, but there was, for a few moments there, a report of a fire in the grass. Don't think it's because of lightning, or there would have been a delay, obviously. But Norman Hall area, there was a brush fire, a small brush fire, according to the UF alert system there, but it's been extinguished. So just they're telling people there at one point to, avoid the area. But now police have cleared the scene, apparently. So a small brush fire on Norman Hall. Don't know if it's anything to do with tailgating, because there hasn't been enough, of that issue there with the lighting. Obviously, if it was that close hidden there, then the game would have been a delay. But according to the UF Weather Stem site, okay, it's now within, it just updated here, looking at the system again in the last few minutes, 5.53 miles now from the west-southwest. We have a lightning strike. So folks, according to the Alachua Weather Stem information, everybody must be completely now within their designated safe locations, but I don't think that's happened yet. Now, that was a cloud-to-cloud strike, so that, some folks may, use that determining, whether they need to delay it or try to get to halftime and just have to delay then. They might be trying to kind of, hedge their bets here a little bit with this, but there has been a lightning strike now detected within 6 miles, and that's, definitely the closest radius, that people would use. I don't think anybody, would be using something less than that to delay. I know ESPN has a bigger radius sometimes. Their cameras, from what I see, I'm not 100% sure because I'm looking at my radar more than anything, but it looks like they're still using some cameras there other than like a wide view. So they normally have a protocol to get everybody in a safer spot. So it's time to go ahead, it's time to go ahead and start getting a shelter. It's around halftime, which may be playing a role in this decision, and it's, going slow, moving in that direction. But in, terms of the situation here, it's looking like it might be time for folks to take their precautions there around Gainesville. Again, a lightning delay not being, called for yet, but right almost at halftime there. There's 19 seconds left before halftime, and South Florida probably called timeout here. 13 seconds before the half. They're down 9-3 in Gainesville, trying to move the ball. At least trying to get a field goal with their kicker, Dramatica. That family has a well-known kicking history there in college football, NFL, and the like over the years. And they're trying to cut it to 9-6 if nothing else before the half. The wind could play a role in some of that. We shall see. I know. Let me go ahead and pull our loop up here on the other mode, and you'll be able to kind of watch this through. I'll play it one more time through. I had it up on my end before you guys saw it, but you'll see this through. And the lightning tracker comes in the end. You see how that's starting to meander to the north and east. The models were starting to say this last night more so. We had a 40% chance of rain and storms through the game. Well, now it's looking a lot more likely than that, of storm problems there in Gainesville. I know putting on the METAR sites, the wind there to the east-northeast, and then our arrows here showing that similar pattern. But it's getting at points maybe a little bit, gustier. I know we had some gusty winds out ahead here in Bradford County, just very little rainfall, 2/100s here. I know big weather story up north today with severe weather warnings, severe thunderstorm watch in play, and even a tornadic, situation there in parts of Massachusetts. They're even confirmed, which is never what you want to see in the meteorology world. So that's kind of the storyline there on that level. As I'm continuing to look at the game, I see some folks talking now, and it's a timeout by Florida. I was wondering if they maybe are going to go ahead and call a delay there, but they're not quite doing that from what I'm seeing here on the SEC Network broadcasters. Are trying to relay that information, from a more meteorological perspective. So again, I know we're just continuing to give you guys the very latest here on thing that's, going to be a increasingly deteriorating situation. I know Gator fans are probably hoping, going to be kind of after how South Florida played last week, maybe wishful thinking, but, hoping this game maybe one-handed up that they could just call the game early if we had storms come in, as the threat has increased, though, from just a 40% chance, which is still, I had it higher than most, computer models, just because I noticed some different things in the pattern, but now it's looking like it's, more likely than not they're going to have problems. That's why we're talking here, folks, on the air, because of that concern increase, and they're probably hoping the game would just get called here. Gators well in hand, but there's no way. I mean, if anything, they just have to, call it a no contest or something. It's too close for sure for them to give Florida the victory, with it, being 9-3 there. So let's go see another radar view. You see this lightning on the edge. That's kind of concerning, because sometimes you can get bolts here out ahead of the storm acts, and granted, a lot of them are cloud to cloud, but it only takes one being cloud to the ground to be a tragedy here. So, it's not to Florida 75 yet. I know it looks like it's a good ways away, but it's really getting within that 8-mile radius, at least one strike as I know South Florida, they're trying to maybe get a field goal or something more. As time's running down, though, 4 seconds left. They got down inside the 10-yard line, down to 2 seconds, but they're just going to have to get their last time out, and whether they try a field goal or a touchdown will try for a field goal or a touchdown will kind of determine on, and kind of hinge on what their coach is thinking in terms of how aggressive he wants to be. I mean, they won that Hawaii Bowl there on Christmas Eve, I should say there, back at the end of 2024, and they had a lot of momentum after that multi-overtime game. USF, and their quarterback, their number 17, Byron Brown, I believe is his name, coming up big there for South Florida to at least get them in the sure field goal range, you would think, but they could just try to go for a touchdown, because they're trying to, be the team that beats, a top 15 team like this. It'd be a historic win for that program if they could pull it off. Down there in, or up there, how you want to call it, since they're coming from West Central Florida, up there in Gainesville. So down there for me, we're stark, of course, with the broadcast. They're not delaying it yet. You see Archer starting to get into some of this Williston, definitely getting into this in Levy County. Quite a bit of lightning there, heavy rain. As we're tracking things, we have all the lightning trackers on to make sure we don't miss any of these strikes here. But, Nico Grammatica there, gonna go ahead and try a 25-yard field goal for USF and a timeout by Florida to try to ice the kicker there. So, again, that's kind of the situation. I believe I pronounced that Dramatica, actually. But as you're looking there, as we're looking at that situation, this lightning, this weather, coming toward halftime festivities, I don't know if it'd be safe for the band to be performing here at this point, unfortunately, for Gator fans. And I'm a Seminole, but we got to keep our folks in Gainesville up to date. This is, turned into a fairly big game, especially with what USF did last week. And we're in Bradford, but, really paying attention to, the FSU home games, UF home games, of course, some away games for these schools, if they have delays, and that'd be something to watch, and other, games outside of the area, not as, maybe pertinent, like the Georgia game, the Clemson game. They're playing, teams they should beat. Clemson was having some trouble. But Georgia's kind of having some trouble too, to be quite honest. I mean, they're winning though at the last check, but they're in a break. They moved that game up an hour, I believe, something like that, up there in Athens because of the bad weather conditions. I know. Interesting weather pattern for sure. As we're tracking things here, USF did get that field goal to make it 9-6 at halftime there in Gainesville, but they're down 3 to the Gators, number 13 Gators. But I know it's a weird weather pattern, believe it or not. Actually, just the overall meteorology and the atmospheric characteristic, tropospheric ducting, not something we probably talk about much on here. Getting some of the Atlanta TV stations here from the Stark area early this morning on that antenna, so from about 250 miles away or so. So definitely some interesting things going on with boundaries in play, and obviously up in the Northeast they've had some tornado warnings there, and like Massachusetts there, and especially that one storm had a confirmed warning. We posted that over on Twitter /ExitCloudCasey when that came on out. I posted early this morning, the SBC outlook, because I was seeing some tornado characteristics I was getting kind of concerned about for folks in the Northeast, and up there in toward New England, per se, if you want to call it that more, use that nomenclature. So we're looking at some wind even in this, not an advisory. I'm a little surprised we don't have a significant other advisory on this. Had a couple around here earlier on, at least, one I was seeing around Lake Geneva. No warnings locally today, but just continue to give you the latest. I know it is definitely getting darker there in Gainesville with the skies. In fact, let me see if we can see our view. It's not going to look right into this, but we'll try to see our camera view. I know you'll be able to see some of the inclement elements here. Just bear with me a second. So yeah, we're looking back to the western Stark. You see some darker skies, some rain dripping here and the like. But as we go ahead and jump back to the radar here, that weather delay concern increasing at halftime in Gainesville. We're to 9-6 lead for the Gators there. But we're just continuing to watch these potentially dangerous weather conditions. No delay yet, but they definitely could end up having one there in the swamp. So we don't have any cameras like right on campus like we do in Tallahassee, or right at campus at least. But we can see some I-75 cameras, and this stuff, starts to approach here. Some nastier conditions. Let me go ahead and do that here right now. We'll try to pull up some traffic cameras as conditions, are expected to deteriorating toward Gainesville here with the overall meteorology. So we're going to try to get some of those up here. Bear with me. I'm going to see if I can get some facing west here. As we're tracking things, just trying to give you guys the very latest. One of these had a bug on the camera, so couldn't really see the sky as good as I want. Goodness, just interesting to have the bug on the camera there, and as I'm doing some maneuvering, one-man band here behind the scenes, as we try to keep you guys informed. In fact, well, you know what, the storm's over Bronson. Let's see if we can get the Bronson cam, because this gives you an idea of what may try to make its way on in there. Goodness, there's some pretty nasty, ponding the water on the roadway there around Bronson. I know this is pretty bad looking. So let me go ahead and pull this in full. There's no warning or advisory, but this is pretty nasty there as we look. This is Bronson there right now. A live looking Bronson. And these are some pretty nasty weather conditions. As if we'll see some more cars go through this. We don't really want them to, but you'll be able to see there's some ponding the water on the roadway even. It's looking pretty nasty here, and some inclement elements. This is Bronson there as we're looking live on the camera. You can't see it as much from this vehicle, but when one was going the other direction there, you could really see it. I was looking at it behind the scenes. This is their US 27. There you go. That tells the story for sure there. My goodness. Look at that water there. This is in Bronson there. Again, a pretty nasty thunderstorm. Not severe. Wouldn't normally be on for it. But because, and there you go again. All that water splashing on up. But we wouldn't normally be on, but because of what's going on down toward, Gainesville, that big event. So many people outside, this is some pretty nasty weather. I know some colder cloud tops in the infrared satellite. I know we've had different games like last week. UCF delayed, for instance, starting the season. UGA delayed today. Still in a delay on the last check at least. Clemson delayed. They were playing again against Troy. It is still delayed. I see it coming up on the scorebug there as I'm looking broadcast. But there you go. Again, this is in Bronson, folks. This is a sign of what? It may not hold together completely. It's this time of year and this pattern kind of iffy. But the lightning concern looks like it's, coming that way. But look at all that water there toward Bronson right now as we're looking live on the Florida 511 camera. That tells a story. A good bit of rain there in that community in our coverage zone on US 27 there. Some folks really having to take it kind of easy, it looks like, as they're turning that corner maybe, as we're tracking things. So again, this is again in the Bronson community. I know it might not be obvious otherwise, but this is around Bronson there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. You know, these nasty weather conditions really telling that story there toward that community. As we go ahead and move back over to the Doppler, of course, looking at things down there. Bronson, as we look at our geography, of course, that's in Levy County, and you see Archer just up the road from that. This isn't severe. This isn't something we normally have to be on for, but we do have, you know, this encroaching upon Gainesville there with the inclement conditions. So really got to be careful. Really got to be mindful of what's going on as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. So again, let me go ahead and check the lightning tracker again in Gainesville. There's just been a strike less than 3 miles away from the stadium, a cloud-to-cloud strike, mind you. Not cloud-to-ground, but that's still, you know, they should be hopefully taking precautions there. 2.87 miles away there in toward Gainesville. So that's very concerning, obviously, toward Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. As we're tracking things, again, a lightning strike within 3 miles off toward the west there. So yeah, it's definitely it is time to be taking precautions there as we're tracking things. You know, we're just trying to give you the very latest here. And in fact, I'm gonna pull up a halftime feed. I know we're still do it. I don't think they're doing it for the ACC schools still, but the SEC does a halftime feed for some of their schools here. And apparently the band is still out in the field as I pull that up on my view here. So we're gonna monitor to see if they evacuate them, because it's probably time to do so. You know, I mean, not that it would be that much of a bigger risk than helmets, but all those metal instruments on the field, obviously those musical instruments, you know, that could be a concern, to increase some lightning risk just a bit. I mean, folks in the stands, it looks like, you know, not really quite taking precautions there yet. I know it looks further off on the radar with the rainfall mode, but with that lightning coming in, again, it's being reported by the UF Weather Sim site. There's just been a lightning strike within 3 miles 3 minutes ago, 2.87 miles off toward the west. It was cloud to cloud, not cloud to ground, but still, you know, you don't want to be taking chances, because the next one could be cloud to ground, and it could be one of those that kind of, it's not a bolt from the blue directly. It is pretty dark out there, but, you know, it'd be best here, especially, it's not like you're at a maybe fair, a smaller fair, where you have, you know, a small group of people you can kind of get toward that shelter a little quicker. This is, takes a little bit of time, so it'd be in their best interest here to go ahead and, you know, move to a safer spot. But look at all that rain around Bronson. You know, if we did get all this rain to pile in Gainesville, I'm not confident that it would be to that level because of the way the pattern is with that much precip, but that's 3 inches of rain there in toward Bronson. That's why we had all that pond and the water on the roadway there in Bronson. That was 3 inches in an hour there around the Bronson community. That was pretty impressive on that traffic cam there in Levy County. So again, as we're looking, there's not a flood advisory for Levy, but the Jacksonville office did issue one for Marion, you know, a little bit adjacent here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. There is a flood advisory over in Northern Marion from the Jacksonville office. So again, we're tracking things. We're live with you right now. A little bit of wind enhancement there, just south, you know, and west of Williston Highlands, just southeast of Otter Creek, or east-southeast. But again, in Gainesville here, let's go ahead and watch the motion of this. It's just gradually encroaching there. You know, it isn't anything like a hurricane, but what I'm about to use my analogy is that it's just the way it's encroaching on them like this is how, you know, a hurricane moves slower and slower. You know, sometimes, not always, but on in, you see a couple of strikes there. The red dot's the stadium here, folks, and this is becoming a concern. You know, that's escalating. The band's still out in the field. Assume my feed I'm looking at is live here. But I'm going to go ahead and look up at some things here real quick up towards some other games. I know, you know, University of Georgia there in Athens, they've had a delay for a while up there. I know they had a delay up at Clemson. I believe they're playing again. I'm not sure. Georgia may be able to play again. Let me see. Let me check that here real quick. Okay, the second half scheduled to resume at 6:02, so in 2 minutes they're in Athens. So that's good news for them. As we're tracking things. But let me see if there's any news, maybe some type of release there. I'm a little surprised we haven't had some type of delay there in Gainesville to get that band off the field here to get everybody safe. I know it's a tricky spot, when you're at halftime, but let me go ahead and, with everybody out on the field already, I hate to interrupt the musical performance, but it might be in everybody's best interest here to go ahead and take precaution in toward Gainesville there. Again, just continuing to watch things there in Alachua County as we're monitoring things, as we're giving you guys the very latest on this. Again, it may be time to go ahead and take precautions there in toward Gainesville. So just checking to see if there's anything. I know there's some flooding concern toward. Well, actually, we just had a flash flood warning in Orange County now in Central Florida. Some of this rainfall is in our area, but let's go ahead and show it to you. There's some concern about flooding down there. Apparently a train spotter reporting water over a curb in the roadway there around Kingswood Drive. And in the last hour, some spots getting 3+ inches around Eatonville and Winter Park there. So now a flash flood warning there in, the Orange County area on the north side of Orlando. So some areas have seen 4 inches. Some areas could end up with 6 inches of rain there before it's all said and done in Central Florida. So, alert, flash flood warning, that green box is coming out down there as we're monitoring things, as we're looking at things here. Let me check something real quick. I know UOCF football is supposed to start at 7. Not sure that's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. Let's see what direction that's kind of moving. Well, I'm moving north, and maybe they'll get lucky with South Sea. They didn't get lucky last week. That impacted them, and this could be a very big impact if they have to delay things in Gainesville. I know other meteorologists are now kind of, on the same bandwagon type of, how should I say this? They're probably not watching me, but, big, broadcasters, some of them are talking about, how they're kind of beating the same drum as me here, and that it's maybe time for a delay in toward Gainesville. So, again, it's time to, and there's still folks, the band's still out in the field there, in toward Gainesville. They're kind of, again, kind of playing it here a little bit, it's still, as we're on the other radar, so I gotta switch some things around because we're on the other radar, but here's, as I zoom in, there's your stadium there. I know, you'll be able to zoom out. Your lightning is, the rain in there, slight rain, but a couple areas, with that electrical energy, that area we're watching, but then this is the main area back here, but even here, moving toward the Arredondo community, we could all of a sudden, the thing about this, it seems like I'm being a little bit overcautious, but the problem is with so many people out there, all of a sudden, we could get a strike right here or something, and then you don't almost have enough time to get to shelter with all the people in the stadium like that. It's not like you can just get to shelter in 2 minutes here, and you could play it safe with a few miles and even, or not have to play it safe and, kind of be, maybe a little bit less cautious. You have to be a little more cautious in this type of situation. I know things kind of look like they're moving north some, but it kind of been meandering here, and they're moving east to some degree here as well. So again, they may have to have a delay here soon. We had that strike one according to the weather stem site there 9 minutes ago, 3 miles or so away in toward Gainesville. So again, weather delay may be needed there as we're looking toward Alachua County as we're trying to give you the latest. It's not like last week. We didn't have any lightning within the radius there in toward Tallahassee. Even had that rain. Delayed baseball maybe, but not football. I know we have Top Cat in watching on YouTube. I appreciate you tuning in again. We're live here with a special coverage because we could have a weather delay. It could be imminent there in toward Gainesville. Not a guarantee, but a definite, lean in that direction, I would say. As I'm looking, I can't see this, but the very dark skies on the UF weather stem camera right now. So that tells a story. Very dark skies. I know, UF's not really getting that game done on the field as they would hope, and that it's a very close one, 9-6 at halftime. But you see the storm action. The thing is, I think they're trying to just push, as much of this in there as they can, because once they delay it, it could last for a good while here with different strikes within the radius, pushing things back 30 minutes at a time. you know, from the last strike, something like that. So let's go ahead and say here, the satellite. Let me go ahead and go to the infrared satellite here. You can see some of these quarter cloud tops like in Levy County, all that rain, all that. I mean, honestly, it should be a flood advisory if there hasn't been one issued in the last few moments down there. You see all these, you know, quarter cloud tops. That's a pretty nasty storm. That's why we have a problem with that finding the water on the roadway around Bronson there, as we were showing you, as we were monitoring things. You know, all that precip there. Let me see if we have anything new from the Weather Service in Ruskin, Tampa, Ruskin. Have they issued anything yet? I don't know that they have. Let's see. Okay, they have now issued one in the last 2 minutes for Williston, Bronson, East Bronson, Williston, Highlands, Williston Municipal Airport, a flood advisory now because of minor flooding in low-lying and poor drainage areas. So, yeah, that's definitely a concern there in that community. I know Williston, you know, somewhat of a concern as well. We'll go ahead and pull up the Bronson camera right now and see this a live look at things. It's not noticeable until the cars drive through it, and that's when you get concerned. But right now, they're 5 minutes from starting the second half. Their kicker's warming up. They're at the intermission in Gainesville. But you can kind of see here, this is a Bronson look at things. You know, you hope not as many folks come on the road here during this inclement weather. And honestly, a lot of folks, you know, be watching, you know, home. They're watching that big game there between USF and UF, or at least listening to the radio. Look at that water. If you could see them turning that corner there. It's a lot of water here in Bronson. Watch this. It's not quite as evident now on that car. Maybe this one a little bit. That when they turn that one corner bottom left. In fact, let me try to do something here real quick. We're going to take off. And I might not be able to catch it quick enough. Let's see here. If you look bottom left. Okay, I'm not going to be able to get it quite. But you see them kind of sort of in that corner. Let's go ahead and take our clock off. We'll go ahead and get the logo off. Just watching the corner there, bottom left, when they're turning that corner. You'll be able to kind of see how that water is definitely ponding on up there in toward Bronson, in toward parts of Levy County. Multiple inches of rain there. You know, a flash flood warning over Orlando now. This isn't a flash flood warning, but it's definitely something of concern there. So, again, I took my logo off for a second so you can kind of see this, of course, now, you know, as we hope for. Not as many people turning that corner. But we're just going to keep watching, keep looking as we're monitoring things here. You'll be able to kind of see what we're talking about there. This is US 27, State Road 24/ Thrasher Drive there in Levy County. You can kind of maybe see something there real quick, but that bottom left is where the water was really ponding. It's more noticeable when they're actually, you know, our cars coming through there in toward that segment of the roadway. So again, definitely telling that weather story there. Maybe, you know, some of the rain slacking some, but then, you know, some of the areas that pond up there, that becomes a bigger concern. So again, this is in toward that area. So that, I think we'll go ahead. Let's jump away from this for now, I think. I'm sure, you know, okay, maybe there you go. You can kind of see it. Oh, there we go. Okay. See a good bit on that. There we go. So that was kind of telling the story. You definitely see it there on the other side, too, when that one kind of came across that other segment. It's, you know, certain segments here are more notable. Certain types of vehicles, certain speeds can play a role. So that kind of tells the story. They're in toward that area. So again, as we're continuing to give you the latest, that's around Bronson there in Levy County. Let me go ahead and we'll pull up our other information real quick as we continue along with this coverage. We're trying to keep you guys up to date here on what's going on. So, looks like Gator Putter's still warming up there with this weather, you know, in that area. Take you to camera in Williston right now. We'll go ahead and take you to a camera there in toward the Williston community. Let's pull up the traffic system. You see some of that water there as well, and toward that part of our viewing circle. Definitely telling a story. Again, let me go ahead and zoom back out a little bit. Again, that lightning, definitely a concern for that area there on Gainesville. Let me go ahead and jump back on over here. I know we're just trying to keep you guys up to date on the situation here. Just trying to keep you guys informed. Still haven't had a delay there. Let me go ahead and, it's tricky because sometimes, you have that rain. You have that rain. It's not really coming in as much. And people don't want to delay things, obviously. So you see that lighter rain. This is earlier, but you see the lighter rain kind of coming on in there out ahead. But, some of those strikes on that heavier rain still trying to encroach. Not as much lightning lately on some of these views, but we still had that strike, that was seemingly within a few miles there in toward the Gainesville area. So, again, we're live with you all the different platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, as we give you guys the very latest here on this. And then they're about to start the second half, it would appear, on the SEC network. 21-mile-an-hour gust there, by the way, around Williston at the Montbrook Airport there around 5:35. As we continue to look, you see some more lightning there. Bradford was trying to play down there in Bushnell tonight. There's a lot more lightning around there, and that would have been a bigger issue. I know it's an hour before one day game schedule, but definitely would have had trouble warming up there. Bradford with a nice win against South Sumter there. Close one, but South Sumter's a pretty good ball club there, a pretty good team. Bradford winning that one 14-12 in that high school football game last night there in Sumter County. As we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, we're just going to continue to give you guys the very latest here. I know as we keep looking at things, I know that, broadcast of that football game, they're down in the Bushnell area on WEAG 106.3. I know Chuck Kramer, been at that radio station so many years. He's retiring, and kind of getting on out there, it would seem, of the radio business, and congratulations to him on his retirement. As we go ahead and look at things here some more toward the Bronson and Archer area right now, you can kind of see we're continuing to watch. They've started the second half now. The Gators have the ball at the 25. They're on 25. And you can kind of see here Florida. I mean, if you're watching the game, it's kind of like maybe a two-screen type of experience. Watch me on one screen and watch the game on the other, maybe. For the, I'm an FSU fan, but, obviously it's an important game. Florida having trouble and losing some yards on that first down play that I don't want to go too detailed in the game, but you guys can find that there. If for some reason, you can't get that SEC network, you can always listen to the radio. A lot of those local stations around here have that, depending on, where you are within our zone, but you can listen there and then just have me down, depending on what stream you're watching. Let me check actually real quick before I say this, but I believe you can get the closed caption in there sometimes on some of these different platforms. It doesn't look like YouTube is bringing it up here, unfortunately. I'll have to see why that is, but maybe because we didn't have audio for a while. But it is up on Facebook, so if you want to go to Facebook, Casey Cloud React, you can get the closed captioning on there. And probably Cloud Weather too. Yeah, you can bring it up on there and just kind of leave that up and read what I'm saying while you listen to the radio. That's another way to do that. So, again, continue to monitor things there. I don't want to let this go because I still think a delay is, more likely than not there in toward Gainesville, even though it hadn't happened yet, and this is moving very slowly. Sometimes this stuff just kind of starts to break up here before it gets in. Maybe the heaviest rain will, but that lightning threat not so much as there, quick 3 and out for the Bulls there in Gainesville in the swamp. But as we go ahead and look here, I know some of this is kind of, just meandering around here. Again, there is Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Some of the different views. This may be a little old because, you have, I know some things that moved around there. baseball and the like. But you have the Stephen C. O'Connell Center there, and you kind of get an idea of some of this action coming on in as we're tracking things. But again, talking about the topography being a little older, like baseball stadium, I think maybe in a different spot from that now. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, but you kind of get the idea as we're looking at the situation. So again, we're having to talk. Last week we didn't have to. Didn't think a delay was necessarily imminent. This rain was coming in. That's a different type of thing as we're tracking things. But again, trying to give you guys the very latest here, obviously, on what's going on. It's all about keeping you guys up to date. So again, let me go ahead and keep looking at things here as I continue to track them. Always important to do that. So again, just trying to keep you up to date. I know that McKeithen Stadium was demolished there, about 5 years ago. I believe it was not really, an ideal thing, but I believe, right before COVID started there, per se, with all the shutdowns, it was FSU baseball there. Former coach Mike Martin Jr. getting that, victory there. It was the last game played in that. It was a win for FSU. That's what I'm referring to, with the topography being a little bit different there. But again, that was back in March of 2020. So, but yeah, things changing on the topography. Let's go back to that. So what I'm saying is, with the baseball here, McKeithen Stadium being demolished, our topography here, one of these days, I guess that'll, I'll have to run some different things and maybe get that updated. But, that's something where that used to be there, but it's no longer there. Different things are in its place there as we're looking, because I'm looking at, like, different maps, and it's definitely obvious. You see where the red dot is, that's the football, and the basketball, that was the baseball. That's no longer the baseball there. As we're looking there, that I'm talking about is this here is not there anymore. And it's a situation here as we're tracking, that was something that's, changed here from this map. And okay, we're now on the broadcast now, they're saying limited coverage, which that makes me think maybe they moved their camera positions. Now ESPN thinks it's unsafe, but they're going to continue for now with the game. Maybe there in Gainesville, they've had to adjust their camera positions because they're not using their full complement of cameras anymore because it's too dangerous for their camera crews. But sometimes ESPN policy, SEC policies, school policy differs, and in this case, apparently they're not on the same page, and the radiuses sometimes are different. So ESPN's decided to pull their people to a safer position, so they're using a limited group of cameras, but the UF and the SEC have decided to continue the game because they think it's in the best interest there of things to try to continue for the time being. So ESPN radius sometimes a little bit different there as well. Quite honestly, that's what it's more about than anything. The ESPN radius different, because this happens at a lot of different games over the years, NFL, college, that I remember. Sometimes, the delay will happen right after. Sometimes it'll never happen, with the game, because, different radiuses sometimes, it ends up being the right call. Other times, you have the storm come in and really cut it too close. So it's not always cut and dry here that, somebody's doing something they shouldn't. But that's why it says limited coverage on the broadcast now, because it's too dangerous for, according to ESPN's protocol, for their camera folks, some of them, to be in certain positions. They've evacuated themselves, but the game is continuing based on what, other folks are saying with the different radiuses between delay radius and move camera position radiuses. An interesting situation. Another interesting situation, I gotta double check that. I almost don't believe that score, to be completely honest. That is something, okay. I'm just having a look at, there's another game we had some weather impacts from, and Troy, the Troy Trojans are going into number 8 Clemson and winning 16-0 right now. in the second quarter. That is a stunning score. That's, game being impacted by weather. I see Clemson just scored now. As I'm talking, they just scored a touchdown and make it 16-6. But having a lot of trouble with Troy there. Top 10 team. And Clemson, they had weather impacts, though. Playing a role, in that to some degree. Georgia game having weather impacts. This Florida game that we keep alluding to, may end up having to delay here at some point. We shall see. Again, ESPN, they moved their positions, as it's going to be Florida ball again potentially coming up. We'll see. But, again, ESPN moved their positions, so probably not going to have as many good, like if there's a controversial call, there won't be as many good camera angles there for a replay to use, and they might just have to stay with the call on the field. That could have a role in, the, game there could determine the outcome even, depending on how long the limited coverage type of monitor has to go there in Gainesville. So again, that's why, that is, there's Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. As we go ahead and zoom back out, again, we're continuing to watch things. I wanted to fake a punt like they did in that game against Boise State last week here. It'd be kind of, something to do with there. They had a backup quarterback, and they're not going to do that. But Florida trying to call for a fair catch. They're pretty far back. But, yeah, this Lightning is just right on the edge there. It's cutting it close there in Gainesville. So, yeah, I mean, let's see here. So, at 6:20, according to UF Weather Stem there, Alachua County, there was a lightning strike 4.6 miles southwest of the stadium. A cloud-to-cloud strike again, but still, let's see, a lot of these cloud-to-cloud, which is a lot better than cloud-to-ground. But still, any of them that are cloud-to-ground, those are the ones that cause problems, but they're still, possible here. Even if you have a whole bunch of cloud-to-cloud ones, one of these could be cloud-to-ground, and that could be a big, big problem. That's when the lightning is not just striking another cloud, it's actually striking the surface, a tree, maybe a home, maybe even a person. You just never know here in these type of situations. So again, I know it looks like it's kind of far away, but it's really not. This right here and this axis, not that far away here within the meteorological radiuses here. As we're looking and as we're tracking things, again, they haven't delayed it yet, but ESPN has now moved their crews to a safer location. They didn't feel comfortable anymore keeping their crews in a certain spot. So ESPN taking action there, based on their protocol to move their camera crews to a safer location. So there's going to be limited camera angles for the time being down there, in Alachua County. So again, I mean, this heavy action's only 12 or so miles from the stadium, between Bronson and Archer is the worst of it, but any strike within that radius can be a cause for concern. So again, we're just continuing to give you guys the very latest here. Just trying to give you the latest on this as we're looking as we're tracking things. Again, just continuing to keep you guys up to date here. Again, it'd probably be, a situation where I would have already had it delayed earlier on. It's just how things can play out sometimes. Okay, so we're trying to give you the latest. Getting word out of Orlando now, I believe, of a delay in their game, UCF's game. They're at that Big 12 school. They are now saying that the game will not begin before 8 p.m. down there. Okay, so the game will not begin before 8 o'clock down there in the Orlando area with UCF's contest. So all that nasty weather. They may be able to start at that point, though, if they get, luck on their side. Gainesville, they've been holding out so far, but it's been, cutting it very, very close there, obviously. As we're looking and as we're tracking things in Alachua County. Again, just trying to keep you up to date. Sticking with this because I still think a delay could happen. weather can play a role in a lot of different things sometimes, whether it's, the way the game goes or just, the mindset, because up in Athens and in Clemson there, they've had delays. Athens looking pretty good right now in Clark County. They're that game on the SEC Network Plus, I believe. It's 21-3 Georgia there in the third. As they're underway there. This game up in Clemson. Georgia winning that one. Now, Clemson is not winning against Troy, in their contest. It's unbelievable. They were down 16-0. It's now, 16-3. So they must have taken the touchdown off the board there. Unbelievable there. You got to feel bad for Clemson, Kate Klubnik and Dabo Sweeney. I know Kate Klubnik there, that two-time ACC champion quarterback, winning that title in 22 and 24. They were losing by 13 at home to Troy right now. I can't believe they, and then during that delay, they were already on 7-0. I can't believe they didn't get their act together during that long delay. That was like a very long halftime. So even if the weather does impact you, you got to be able to kind of be resilient here in these type of situations and kind of have everybody energetic about things. Kind of, after the OSU game, unfathomable. Clemson could still win the table, sure, in terms of the ACC season, but that's not good for them. As weather can have all sorts of different impacts on people as we're tracking things. There's Clemson. The weather's clearing out there. Might want another delay at this point. And then Athens there, weather situation there clearing out. But in Gainesville, we're still watching that game. USF there, I almost called it UCF, but no, the South Florida there, of course, UCF game going to be in a delay, but USF there just intercepting Florida. So what a game there. End award that one. But let's go ahead and check the Miami radar real quick if we can. Let me go ahead and put that in here. Miami, Bethune-Cookman, the weather looks pretty good for that one right now. Let's get back over. I know I need to switch this, and we'll do so. And, you see stuff in Central Georgia. That's not our concern here. But this here has been that concern right around Archer. That lightning there, that electrical energy. And reviewing the play in that game there in Gainesville. But again, you see around Archer there, Archer, Bronson, and Williston. It's not been a nice weather, evening here, and it's moving up even around Bellevue there. It's in a little more populated areas there, trying to get into some of this. Let's check the direction on some of that. That's, kind of meandering around as well, per se. As we're continuing to watch things, continuing to track things there. Backing it up, going forward. Again, ESPN moved their camera crews to a different position, but not a delay there at the university level there, and or Gainesville or at the SEC level, but at the broadcast level, there has been one. So, in terms of them moving their cameramen out of position because they deemed it unsafe. So again, different radiuses. That's the reasoning behind that here, folks. The lightning, certain radius, one group will take precautions. Sometimes, other groups have different protocol here, and that's what we're dealing with. That's why, the game is still underway. They're in a commercial right now, but reviewing things. But again, we're looking at Archer to Williston there. You're moving to southwestern Alachua. It's not severe. We wouldn't normally be on with this if it wasn't for that game. But, tens of thousands in that, stadium, that cultural event, per se, is what we, call it. It's out there in, what could be the weather, as we're tracking here. And that's why we got to be mindful. It's a very close game. So, obviously it's not one we can just say, well, they were going to win or call it. They'd have to do, if they somehow the weather were to be an issue for ours, they'd have to do like a no contest or something. But we're talking about many, many folks there at that stadium there, Ben Hill Griffin. Tens of thousands there in the swamp. It's kind of swampy weather today, as the announcer Dave Neal is calling it. As we're going to go ahead, and by the way, he's an FSU alum, by the way, Dave is, but as we're going ahead and giving you guys the latest here on this we're just in a Wake Forest game. They're in a delay. They're in a delay as we're looking and as we're tracking things. Because of inclement weather up there, there's been quite a few weather impacts. Us up in Winston-Salem, we've had big problems there with the weather. Let's go ahead and go to a broader perspective here. I know we've just had so many different issues with the meteorological scenarios here. I know there's so much of this electrical energy causing issues. There's that slight risk up toward New York City, but the worst's kind of passing them by. But you have some storms there around Boston. We've had, flash flood warnings still around parts of New Jersey there. You see some thunderstorm warning in Delaware, around Dover. Not necessarily huge games there, but you see this stuff past Clemson with some warning acts in there. Spartanburg and Union counties in South Carolina. As we go ahead and give you guys the latest here, you see the lightning, which just continues to that general thunderstorm risk in the lighter green there. As we go ahead and give you guys the very latest here, you see Archer there around US, let's see here, US 27, of course. By the way, some penalties there against Florida in that one. They were a double-digit favorite in that contest, but they're having trouble right now with 9-6 in the third. Kind of wondering if the camera folks have kind of moved back to their positions. I'm not sure because I don't see that thing on the screen, but there was a strike at 624.6 miles southwest, according to the Alachua Weather Stem information. So, right there, 5 miles away from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And again, it's not coming right at them directly. It's not, obvious. That's the thing. Sometimes in meteorology, things can be real obvious. That we're going to have a line coming through. We can warn people. They just take precaution, and then they're all right. Sometimes these things are tricky. This time of year, even around like July 4th, things can be very tricky. This year, I know it's straightforward in the historic area there with a delay being necessary for like different events. But last year, it wasn't, straightforward in that time frame because of different meteorological patterns. So you just never know how things can shape up here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So you can see a lightning strike here east of Archer. See another one there right around State Road 121. Again, the protocol is that, most people would say, that the delays here, you can't just base them if they're cloud to cloud and cloud to ground. I mean, any of them around, you just got to delay it, really. Again, okay, you're saying limited coverage on the broadcast there. So, the camera folks staying in their, safer spots, not being right out in the open, maybe. Many of them, it's using different views that they already have, which can be helpful. So, again, trying to give you guys the very latest here. Just trying to update you. Again, trying to update you. Looks like USF punting that away. I don't particularly like this here. You see some of these lightning strikes now east of 75 just kind of popping up way out ahead. Now, that's the thing. If, we get one of these up in here around Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, if it's cloud to cloud, it'd just be scary, for everybody. But if it's cloud to ground, that could be a tragic scenario, a tragic outcome. So that's what we got to be careful about. This bolts, technically, it wouldn't be from the blue, but it'd be kind of like being from the blue here. So you just got to be very, very mindful of that as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there in toward Gainesville. It's not, as easy as it sounds here with this situation as this accident continues, to kind of be an issue. And there's a stadium right there, that football stadium, But we continue to watch. We continue to track a very low-scoring game. I see there's so many games, by the way, delayed, and this one not. But Navy game delayed against UAB even. It's getting darker there in Gainesville, by the way. If nothing else, I mean, you know, we look at different things here, obviously. This rain, this light rain is going to be in there pretty soon, if nothing else. I know years ago, you know, look back about a decade ago, they had a game that was impacted by weather. I mean, we've had hurricane impacts, but there was a game that was so stormy, you know, that they just weren't able to do it. I believe it was against, as I'm looking this up here, I want to make sure I get this right. The game had to be suspended due to weather, Florida versus Idaho. Now, considering FSU had that win there against Idaho, like the year before, I think it was by a wide margin. I don't think it was, even Florida wasn't that good. It might not be that close, but the Vandals and the Gators, they had that game suspended. It was unplayable, unsafe field conditions, and I don't think they ever made that game up. It was canceled, never rescheduled. So, yeah. You know, they've been playing this one, though. It's been in there for a while. I don't know. They might have taken like a snap or two in that one. I can't remember because I wasn't, you know, that FSU, so that wasn't my priority. But point is, you know, interesting scenario there. I know Idaho. I know FSU beat them. It was, we saw the score on some of the graphics today. I think it was 80-14. That was a 66-point differential for FSU that they won by in that one. But today, FSU won by 74 points. Yeah, in football, really, they won 77-3 against team there, East Texas A&M, the Lions. So, getting 4 different quarterbacks in there. That was great to see for the Noles. What a great win. You know, it was an easy team. I mean, obviously. It wasn't like they were doing this, you know, when I was there, they were doing stuff like that against, like, I believe it was Maryland. It's a top 25 game, and FSU won by maybe the most ever. Our top 25 game, Jameis and the team won by like 50-something points in that one. That was a fun noon game for sure there over a decade ago. But, you know, still, you know, something that is, you know, notable for the Noles, considering what happened last year coming off the season. That was a perfect one until that playoff snub. But Florida just made a big play in their game against USF there in Gainesville. So they're probably trying to see if they can get, you know, a game a little bit more in hand there than just a 3-point lead as we look at velocity. I know, and with this a roll on time, we had the radar stream going, but look at all this rain, how much it's fallen there into parts of Levy County in the last hour, over 3 inches in that area. This is storm total. Some areas up close to 4.5 to 5 inches there northeast of Bronson as we approach, you know, Alachua County. Southwest of Williston over 4 again. There haven't been any local warnings or anything, and some rain still falls there, which is concerning. May end up getting a flash flood warning somewhere, not necessarily seeing severe. That does look like a pulse up in the wind a little bit there now around Bellevue. I know we had the flash flood warning outside of the covered area down around Orlando. There's been problems, 4 inches. You know, all that concrete down there and that rain, even a similar amount as our area. There's not, some of these areas not as much concrete. That's a little concerning on Bellevue there. And we had those pop-up tornado warnings the other day. Not necessarily seeing that, but we're seeing a little bit of wind enhancement. I think there needs to be an advisory on there for that Bellevue area with some of that lightning. I'd go ahead and issue a significant other advisory. Not that many people pay attention to those, but around County Road 484 there, definitely looks like some wind enhancement, especially being that far away from the radar. It looks like we have winds about 50 based on what I'm seeing there in southern Marion County right now. So again, just trying to give you guys the latest as we look at our coverage map there. We're in Bradford. I'll keep you guys updated for the 62 counties. You know, they're 2/3 of the way down to that third quarter now in Gainesville, but we still could get a weather delay. It's not out of the question. It's not like it's completely falling apart. It's just very, very slowly meandering. I mean, ESPN's having to use different angles. They're doing a pretty good job on the limited coverage, you know, that they have there. But it's just kind of how it is sometimes as we're looking at things. As we're tracking things there, you know, definitely nothing, you know, like the tropical weather that we can have, but I know we've shown this to you guys plenty here in terms of the last few weeks, but I just want to pull it up again. This is that look here at those systems, those worst tropical cyclones by county within the 62 going back since they've been naming things, 1950. You know, Helene was that one that was so dominant in terms of the area being taken up there. But Dora and Michael, you know, Alberto, You know, big stories, Arma, big story, Kate. I mean, all these have been big stories. Even Adalia was, but it wasn't one after what happened with Helene that, you know, one up things here. So, what a crazy storyline there. We did just get an advisory from Marion. Let me see here. It hadn't popped up on here, but it did pop up on my other system. Let me see when that got issued here. We're just kind of talking about that. They issued at 6:40, it looks like, based on that's when it came across on Twitter. So that's good that they issued that. I mean, and we're kind of on the same page there. Not good that it's anticipating. That's looking pretty strong there. That's looking like it may be close to needing a severe thunderstorm warning for Southern Marion. Quite honestly, even maybe, I mean, maybe a tornado possible tag. I don't know if we're quite to that level, but I mean, I'm trying to look at some different angles. Really far from the radar down there, but as we look there, we see the rotation on another mode here for Southern Marion. On the rotation tracker. Let me pull up. Not really seeing supercell composite, but we have the instability here. Some different boundaries, maybe. You know, when they interact, that can be an issue. So, may end up needing some type of warning there for Southern Marion. I wasn't expecting, you know, that type of warning, a wind type warning. If we get anything, a flash flood could end up getting that too somewhere. I mean, but as we're looking here, we, you know, have some wind enhancement there, right, just west of Bellevue. Into Ward Marion County. Let me go ahead and see if we can pull up any traffic cameras from that area right now as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. Let me see if I can pull something up in the Bellevue community. So bear with me. This is pretty nasty. It's right near that horse park there. It's the Florida Horse Park. Yeah, it's almost like what you'd call whiteout conditions here, folks. Look at all that rain coming down there. I-75 right now. Not that anybody's leaving early. I mean, you know, that game there in Gainesville, but folks traveling, I mean, let's say there probably are folks traveling from Tallahassee, you know, that are headed home after that big win for the Knowles. And if they're, you know, it's possible they could be in Marion County right now, you know, headed south towards Central Florida, something like that. And this is not ideal weather here at all to have to travel through as we're looking at things there in southern parts of Marion County. Look, that might be even a little hail in there, not sure, but not ideal conditions there in southern Marion County as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So again, we're continuing to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on. I know it's possible, folks, that Lefty FSU game could very well be in that area. That's, you know, about the time frame, give or take. You know, that some folks heading home after, you know, maybe stayed last night and wanted just one night in the hotel, and look at how bad that is there now. They might be headed, like, let's see, from Tallahassee down toward the Tampa area, back home, you know, after they had that, you know, night up there and morning, afternoon for the game up there, and they're running into some nasty weather right now, so that's not what you want to see. It's just, you know, pretty close to needing some type of warning there in southern Marion County. So again, continuing to give you guys that there. Look at things there. I mean, torrential rain and what we saw doesn't necessarily need a warning, but what, you know, this right here kind of says maybe you do need a warning there west of Bellevue. So again, and that there too. I mean, right along to County Road 484, that it could be a little bit of pixel displacement as we're looking and as we're tracking things. I mean, these different radars, I mean, that says a little on both sides. They're close to Summerfield. It's going to be kind of far away, but I'll pull in as well. And you see some wind in that mode too. Let's go to Melbourne radar. See some wind enhancement off of that as we go ahead and jump back on over. You know, that's a pretty nasty storm in Marion. And then I do want to say, though, things, and the rain's coming into Gainesville to some degree here. You know, getting closer. Parts of town have the rain, but where that stadium is, the lightning threat, I mean, there's a strike here, but there's a chance, you know, if they're just going to kind of, you know, play it where that radius there is maybe a little bit smaller in terms of delaying things, they might be able to get that whole game in the way things are going. It's not a very good one for Florida. It's 9-6. It sounds like it's been pouring rain. If you didn't watch the game, it hasn't rained there that I've seen. I mean, 9-6 late in the third, you'd think it's been pouring rain, and that's a very, very low score. Only 15 points total in that one. But it hadn't been pouring rain. The threat of rain's been there, though, in toward that area in Alachua County. So, again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest. What a sloppy game there, but I mean, good defenses and impacting things, but we'll go ahead and look here at Southern Marion again. That weak rotation around the Bellevue community even. You know, we're watching, we're tracking. There's an advisory here, gust to 40 according to the latest in Jacksonville. Ocala, Santos, as well as Silver Spring Shores, Ocala Airport, Lake Weir, Bellevue, and Summerfield in that advisory polygon. Check for any type of odd signature, not necessarily seeing that. Hope you wouldn't see it from that far away. That'd be bad. Ooh, that's a little bit concerning there. Again, that looks like weak rotation, but sometimes in these heavy rain events you can get it aloft, and it's really not, as bad as it looks. You just don't know because they're so far away. Okay, they did just issue a warning now, so that's what I was kind of thinking here. Even though things are looking a little bit better in Gainesville, they're not for Ocala, and we now have a warning. So let's go ahead and switch some of our graphics around here. Give me just a second. We're going to go ahead and switch some things around here. We do have a warning now for part of Marion. So let me go ahead and see what I can do here with this. Again, we're going to kind of shift our focus. Okay, so we now have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect now. This is going to go till 7:30 for the Marion area there. We do, by the way, have South Florida now taking the lead against Florida, by the way, in Gainesville 12-9 later on in the third. That's a dramatic storyline in terms of the football. But we do have this warning now. They're not going tornado possible, but there is a severe thunderstorm warning for the potential for 60-mile-an-hour winds for southeastern Marion County now. Again, this goes till 7:30. At 6:45, a severe thunderstorm was located near Santos, or 9 miles south of Ocala, moving northeast at only 5 miles an hour. Ocala, Santos, Ocklawaha, Moss Bluff, Silver Spring Shores, Ocala Airport, Lake Weir, Bellevue, and Summerfield under this warning. So again, we do have a severe thunderstorm warning now for parts of Marion County. Does include the Ocala Metro, but the focus a little south. But if you're in it, you see all that lightning and heavy rain, you don't necessarily realize that maybe the worst isn't there. It's still bad enough, still dangerous here in toward Marion County. Again, a severe thunderstorm warning now. We've been talking about that game for a while in Gainesville, and now things have escalated. Now we have a warning here locally, a severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Marion County until 7:30 here. So it's time to take shelter interior room away from windows if you can here. Not quite a tornado warning yet, but at 6:45, a severe thunderstorm is located near Santos, or 9 miles south of Ocala, moving northeast at 5 miles an hour. Ocala, Santos, Ocklawaha, Moss Bluff, Silver Spring Shores, Ocala Airport, Lake Weir, Bellevue, and Summerfield. I mean, when you hear thunder, you're supposed to already go indoors here. It's a situation here where we have a little bit more than that right now. We have a severe thunderstorm warning here for parts of Marion. It's been kind of quiet lately on the radar and started to perk back up today, and now we have a warning, here for parts of the covered area. So, yeah, things definitely starting to look a little bit more optimistic there as I loop it back and forward for that game in Gainesville in terms of the weather. Score not so much for Florida. They're losing late third, 12-9 to South Florida, who is a pretty good team. They did beat Boise State by a lot. Injured player right now, unfortunately, for South Florida. But as you look at this warning here, you can see around I-75, we do have maybe a little bit of weaker wind signature action than we had maybe the last frame or two as you kind of go back and go forward here. But I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of trees get knocked down there in parts of Southern Marion. I mean, the Tampa radar is still showing up pretty nasty right there. County Road 484 there, just, west side of Bellevue there. Right there around some of these different areas there in toward that region. Definitely a concern as we're looking and as we're tracking things here. Trying to give you guys the latest. I mean, we have this warning in effect. Trying to keep you up to date. Is there any questions or comments from the viewers at home? Bear with me here. Don't see any right now, but again, we switched away from the game itself because of the warning. A formal warning here in play for parts of the covered area now. So we have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect here. It's just one county away from Alachua. This is not, something that's, an indirect impact in Gainesville or anything like that, because the way things are meandering. But again, we have that warning there for parts of Marion County as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, trying to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on. Again, a severe thunderstorm warning there until 7:30 for one of our southernmost areas here. Within the viewing circle. Technically, it does go, up against an area that's not in the viewing circle in the way of Sumter County. A good thing Bradford wasn't having that game tonight, because even though they're kind of moving out of that area, I'm sure the field would have been messed up some by these heavier downpours there. But they're getting hit hard around Bellevue right now. Hard, in terms of the nasty weather conditions there as we go between all the modes. Trying to check things here against Elizabeth Jackson sent out a tweet. Strong winds to 60 miles an hour possible there. As we're looking and as we're tracking things there in Marion County. They are talking about this here. Very heavy rain near and south of Ocala. So 600 indoors and away from, windows there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, a nasty situation right now in the word Marion County, as we continue to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. So again, we're with you right now, trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you informed, trying to make sure that you're up to date on what's going on. It's so important to do this, that, we started out talking about the football accent, but we had to shift here our attention for the time being to that one in Marion, one county away, and on I-75 for that matter. Some of that, nasty weather impacting those communities. Again, checking some things behind the scenes here. I'm a big college football fan, so I'm trying to, monitor some of the other games here across the country, even as I talk to you guys, because those have been the story talking about college football. We do have a warning right now. It's like, gotta be, I guess, a little more serious than can't this, write things off here. As we're looking at, as we're tracking things. Again, keeping you informed. And we had that flash flood warning in the word Marion County. I mean in the word Orange County, excuse me. We have the severe thunderstorm warning in Marion, but look how it's cleared out in orange now as I go through some things. It's that game there. Hopefully it'll be able to get going pretty soon. UCF football game. Again, this yellow box indicative of that damage and wind concern there. Looking right around I-75 there in Marion County. As we're looking, as we track things. It's all about keeping you guys up to date. We'll try to pull some more traffic cameras in if we can. Let's pull some more up. This looks like a lot of traffic and not good weather, so let's go ahead and pull this on in. We'll go ahead and do that is turn this way off of 75, it looks like. Okay, so there's the radar and velocity. There's your camera. I-75, you see some pond of water on the roadway there, and look at all that traffic. This is around, that area there in the Bellevue community and northern Marion County. Not ideal with so many folks having to be on the road in these inclement conditions. Again, all those lights, having to be on in these poor weather conditions there in North Marion County. And we'll go ahead and jump back on over to the velocity. There's a report of a disabled vehicle there in Marion County on I-75 North, according to Florida 511 at mile marker 343. The right lane blocked. It has a 649. In fact, you can see that on the traffic cam, and it says adverse weather conditions. So let's pull this up. There you go. I-75 there is where we're looking, and you see disabled vehicle. And that's causing, some concern, especially if people can't see it and reduce visibility. That could be a problem here. You see some lightning there. It's not a time, no time's ideal to be disabled in terms of your vehicle. They're not being able to be moved here, having a disabled vehicle. Never a good time for that, but especially not during a thunderstorm and not during a severe thunderstorm warning. So, again, let's go ahead and keep giving you guys the latest here as we go ahead and pop things back up. In terms of the other views here, we'll try to look at some of these different roads. Just bear with me, it's a one-man band, so I'm trying my best here to get the different views here up. Again, we had to switch our focus to this warning there in Marion County. It's on all the different platforms, keeping you guys safe, keeping you guys informed. And if you miss something I say while I'm on with the stream, whatever, on YouTube, you can back it up there, youtube.com/@cloudsweather. So that's something to keep in mind. You can even hit that subscribe button, it's free. And there's even ways to be notified when I come on live. So that's another thing you can do. Of course, I do sometimes have those, really late night updates there during the week, those full updates, but you still can subscribe there on YouTube, and that's free, and you'll have that in your feed about my different videos. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on right now. Trying to keep you up to date. Trying to keep you informed. We'll focus here on outdoor conditions because of the weather, impacting that Gainesville contest there. But people, maybe being outside in other areas and they have problems, obviously, with these inclement conditions. Now, another thing we touched on here the other day, the tropics, well, they're looking a little bit better right now. Model will keep shifting around, I'm sure, but for the time being, it'll look a little bit better. For our area in terms of a long track system for sure. It's even maybe having trouble to develop, having trouble developing. And then the system toward Hawaii may, starting to look like it may end up going a little bit further north. Hurricane Kiko out there in the Pacific Ocean. So, but even just a low chance of that system out there in the Atlantic developing now in the next 7 days after it had a 90% chance. It's all the way down to just 20% of developing. The model's having some issues here. In some of these different, areas here in the life. But again, just trying to keep you guys up to date here. I'm just trying to keep you guys informed. Trying to keep you guys informed here. We see different wind directions here. We'll look at some of the areas, and that's always a big, player right here in some meteorological storm activity. Gainesville, it's looking like they may end up getting to that game. Now, Florida may not, win that game there against USF, but in terms of meteorology, things are looking a little bit better up that way. Let's get back to the south, though. Let's get back down here. On I-75. Some wind enhancement there, but that's looking a little weaker for that severe thunderstorm warning, now, to be quite honest, which is a positive. It's off the Tampa radar, but sometime, let me see if this is the closest. It is, the Tampa is, but let me check Jacksonville here. You can see we have some wind enhancement still, but it's not as apparent now, but it's still a nasty thunderstorm for Bellevue. They definitely wouldn't, if they had the game down there. Ocala, Bellevue, they would not be playing right now like they are in Gainesville. They're getting kind of lucky with the weather here holding out for them because it was within some radiuses, including ESPN having to, move folks around there because it was just too dangerous. It was just too dangerous, for them. But no warning up there. We have the warning in Marion. That's what we had to switch gears into here during the course of this coverage. So, again, we're at 7 o'clock at the top of the hour. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. We'll continue to watch the severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Marion County here. Some 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts possible there. We had a little bit of weak rotation even at a point there as we were continuing to give you guys the very latest. So just continue to update you. Continuing to update you. It's 15-9 now in that game in Gainesville. I know I had a hype coming in the year for UF after only winning, 7-8 games. It could be, something where the coaches, right? We did this last year with weather delay, Texas A&M game. People thought that might be it for the coach, and he, had some upset victories there, Billy Napier did, and then all of a sudden, thought they were going to be a playoff team this year. I had them on the edge of it this week, just out, but they're not going to be, they're not going to be in the picture whether they win or lose on mine probably after this performance. Even the USF is probably a lot better than people want to give credit for. I mean, you do this against teams like Texas or even FSU and LSU and Miami. It's not going to end well for Florida here, I don't think. If they don't turn things around, I mean, it's a game they should be at home at least. They should be able to win in Gainesville. So again, continue to give you the latest. It's very dark there. The skies in Gainesville. Some of that rain coming in, but again, I mean, one strike and you can have a delay, but mostly I stay in Archer down to, kind of play in here with maybe a little smaller radius than maybe we anticipate. The sideline reporter's still down there, or down there again at this point in time, so that's good. As we're looking as we're tracking. But we do have the yellow box here. Severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Marion, Ocala, and Bellevue there under this. Silver Spring Shores. Some of the different areas. Summerfield there. I know as you look around US 301, some of the different areas. Again, trying to give you guys the latest. Looking at this storm, I'm not as impressed, as I was there initially. There's still some torrential downpours there. See some of the clouds here from the infrared view. Definitely those purple quarter cloud tops there in southern Marion County. As we're looking and as we're tracking things. We're on 75. That can definitely lead to, that's more moisture in the upper levels. That can lead to more efficient rainfall producers and dew point high level of moisture in the lower levels. And let's go ahead and put on the rainfall here. You see all this heavy rain that's falling. Red areas 3+ inches, Some areas, closer to 4 or 5. I mean, there you go. There's a good update. Not what you want to see, but see, maybe there's now 5 inches in Levy to the 7 o'clock hour today. And that could even be underdoing it just a tad. So I know, trying to keep you up to date, and we're trying to just give you updates on everything here meteorologically. 3.5 inches there. At least 3.69 actually, about 45 minutes on a public weather station there in the ward areas around Santos, 7 miles southwest. That's the storyline. A lot of precip could get a flash flood warning down there, not out of the question. As we're looking, as we're tracking things. Again, trying to keep you up to date. Been with you for a while now on this. There's no warning for Gainesville, but the warning's down here in northern Marion County. See the Bellevue area? You know, some of these areas, a few inches of rain, short period of time. A storm in Citrus County outside of our area around Inverness that's looking pretty strong there. Tampa TV market down there. So again, we're continuing to watch things, but I think at this point, I know we have that yellow box. If we get more warnings, we'll be breaking back in, obviously. And if we get a delay there, we'll break back in. But I think we kind of covered everything we need to for the time being here. Of course, if we see something that we need to jump in for, we will. But we've been talking for a while. Haven't had a delay there, but ESPN did have to do the camera crews there. It might be backward. I think they're probably back by now, in position, but they were getting concerned about it there, and, within their radius, based on their protocol to take precautions, but probably get some light rain, at least in Gainesville there, and it still could get some lightning, but it might be about the extent of it here. We shall see as we continue to give you guys the very latest. So what we're going to do here, we're going to go ahead and pull the looping radar in here. Florida's with a big kick return here, a punt return, I should say. They're trying to get that lead back. They're down by 6, early 4th, on the SEC network against USF, South Florida. There's a penalty, though. So I don't know if it's coming back. It might be. Not sure. You see how the temperatures have cooled down in Gainesville. It was there as we started the loop. It was at 85, some air, you're in 90. And it's dropped down now, so that's helpful if you're not getting a storm action. Penalties on USF, so it's going to get even closer there, in terms of Florida being closer to the end zone. But again, you see things looking a little bit better on Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Maybe some rain, but the delay's looking less and less likely now, based on, using a different type of radius here than some, cloud to ground strikes, not necessarily set up at cloud to cloud world, some that are within just a few miles or so, but ESPN did, pull their folks there for a while, but the game and the band, halftime continued. Now they're in the early 4th, with South Florida holding a 15-9 lead on number 13 Florida on the SEC network. Long way to go in that one, but FSU, they had a much easier opponent, but they won 77-3 today. It was a hot day, a dangerously hot day, but the weather there, from the rainfall standpoint, it's not, a story, but the heat standpoint, the weather was a story. Okay, they just dropped the warning, which is great because, I was kind of hoping they would before I wrap this, to be quite honest. It could issue a flash flood as possible, but severe threat, because this weekend there is no longer an immediate threat to life and property in terms of the severe wind aspect. So that's good. That's gone now. So we're just going to go ahead. We're always watching things across the coverage area. We're always watching things across our coverage area. I'll pull up our map. And let me go ahead and just switch a couple things over again. So let me go ahead and do that. Give me just one moment here and then we'll wrap. We're going to keep the stream going for the radar, obviously. But in case they do have to go into a delay here. So let me go ahead and get that on up. Switch back over to that view. And we'll go ahead and just kind of wrap it for now. We'll come back in if needed. Stay tuned. Stay safe. Florida close to scoring. Maybe about to get that lead. They're down by 6. Touchdown extra point would give them the lead there. Touchdown and extra point by their kicker, Trace Mack, after see if DJ Lagway's go out and get in the end zone there. It's a tight one in Gainesville. Early 4th quarter there with the weather looking a little bit better for them. They get some shower action, but you see how things have progressed in the loop. Still got to watch out for a rogue lightning strike. It's not impossible. As you just saw one kind of just pop up there in North Putnam. I know that red area there. We've, been watching some things. I'm going to zoom in real quick. I want to make sure I have this in the right spot because I'm zooming all around and it is in the right spot. So let me go ahead and zoom back out. Again, let me center this up just a little bit here. That red square is where the stadium is. That's Florida. That was an ugly play for them. They should have had a touchdown on that. But as we're going ahead and continuing to watch, it's going to be 3rd down there in that game. 3rd and goal for the Gators. But in the early fourth again. That's on the SEC Network. They're losing. They're struggling against South Florida, who's not lowly South Florida like they were maybe when they almost beat Alabama a couple years ago. And should have been a sign that Alabama shouldn't have made the playoffs, and Florida State should have that year. But South Florida's better this year. They beat Boise State by a wide margin last week. So got to give them credit for that. And they're right there on UF and Gainesville right now, but it could go down to the wire. And looking like the weather may not interfere in terms of lightning. Still not impossible that it does. Florida just scored, by the way. They're tied up at 15. So that's a big score and a big storyline there. As we go ahead and pull this back in now. We'll keep this up and we'll cut back in if warranted weather-wise. But for now, stay tuned, stay safe. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center.